So, hello everybody, and welcome to the first episode of The Secret Life of a Student Athlete podcast. This podcast is all about showing that sport and academics can work together, even when the world tells you that it can't. We'll be sharing real stories and challenges and lessons that can help young athletes thrive in this environment and keep the balance between sport and academics. Today, we're introducing the three hosts of the show, Jordan, Daniel, and Diana, and we're just going to learn a little bit more about them and what everybody can get out of the show. So, Jordan, you are an IOC young leader, and you've represented Nigeria internationally in martial arts. Can you tell listeners a little bit more about your journey and what kind of perspective you want to bring to the podcast?
Yeah, thanks, Lianna. Thanks for introducing us. So I've been able to represent Nigeria in Taekwondo internationally, which has been a great opportunity. And then being part of the International Olympic Committee Young Leaders Program allows me to use sport to kind of tackle the whole issue with the lack of support students and athletes have in Nigeria and then Africa as a whole. I think in terms of a unique perspective is that I'm currently still competing. And then I'm also a PhD student in genetics. So I'm in the space where I'm trying to basically balance the whole sports and academics at a really high level. The perspective I'm coming with is it is possible, it is hard, but it's possible, and trying to figure out how different people have been able to navigate that space and then what challenges people face and how we can help.
Amazing. And what part of the kind of student athlete experience matters most to you? Like, how have you managed to balance this for so long so far?
Oh, it's a very good question. It'd be achieving a goal that people think is impossible. So growing up, I wasn't really exposed to a lot of people who were able to navigate both spaces. But as I have met more people, I'm like, there's actually a lot of people that have been able to do this. It's just not spoken about that much. So it's bringing that to the forefront and being like, these are people who have been able to do this. These are their stories. So you're breaking that misconception that you can't do sports and academics. So, yeah.
Well, that is very exciting, and I'm excited to learn very much more about that. Diana, you've competed in show jumping and represented Zambia at the African Games. Amazing. What made you kind of be a part and join Jordan on this podcast, and what do you hope to kind of bring and help listeners learn from your experience?
Sorry, so the first thing is my voice is gone, so it's going to be a hard conversation. But I think fundamentally I'm really interested in sport on one hand, really interested in the impact of sport on people and on communities and just developmentally for human beings, right? So that's on one hand really interested in that, and then on the other really Africa centered. So in sort of mine and Jordan's friendship developed through doing things to progress information and knowledge sharing about Africa. So those combined was the perfect little combination for me to get involved in this podcast. In particular, I'd love to highlight the opportunities that African athletes could have, because more often than not, they're forced to kind of pick between. I'd love to have a situation where you can see that it is possible to do both.
That's amazing. So could you tell us a little bit more about your own experience and how you kind of have balanced that in your own life, and maybe it still kind of shapes who you are now?
Yeah, so I would definitely say if I take it back a step, I only apply to unis that provided my sport. So that was a major sort of thing for me at the time. And then sort of the pinnacle of my career was during my PhD. So I did Africa Games during my PhD. And I wouldn't say it was simple. And I think perhaps being in a niche sport made it more difficult because I then did have to kind of like taper off a bit. And then I then did have to pick academics to some degree. But it is possible. Perhaps my sport being quite niche made it more difficult, but I sort of stayed engaged. If it wasn't directly doing my sport at uni, it was doing sort of like sport management to a degree. So being involved in running the sports or being involved in all like sporting initiatives at uni. So I was always locked in to some degree.
That's amazing. You've literally just like, even just that small period, but even it's been on for a while, of kind of two really huge moments of a PhD isn't just like a walk in the park. Like that's a huge time commitment and mental space commitment. And then also such a big competition in the Africa Games. That's wild. And when did you have to kind of choose then? And how did you balance that?
So I think, so at the Africa Games, I actually fell off and fractured my hip. So that was a big part of the process, is dealing with injury and perhaps not having the support to deal with the injury and the comeback. And then there was COVID. So there was lots of factors then that then ultimately I then had to kind of like opt out, and I had to like reduce in priority, and life kind of took over, which was a shame. But in a different situation, perhaps if I'd managed to be on some sort of like sports scholarship or something to facilitate coming back from injury and back into training, who knows what might have been different at the time.
Totally. And also just amazing that you did have such a strong, not even a backup, but like you had your PhD.
Yeah, 100%.
You occupied, and it's just showing that, you have balanced that and successfully as well.
Yeah.
Daniel, you too have balanced academics, engineering, football, and now you're in tech, which we've talked about. What angle are you kind of excited to bring to the podcast and share with people?
I think my approach to kind of sport has been, and I think what I'll bring towards like this podcast is I think the experience of kind of picking up sports again and finding like your love for sports even beyond like your student time, or beyond the time where maybe you fall off it because you maybe were not able to go to the highest level, and how you can really enjoy it and pick up new skills. So as someone that focused solely on football and then moved into running and still playing football, and then another thing I didn't mention yesterday is that I don't know how to swim, but one of my goals for 2026 is doing a triathlon. So I'm going to learn how to swim in the first 3 months of the year, and then the triathlon is on the 19th of July. So the goal is to sign up for that and basically do that. So it's like I'm finding love for all these different sports and competing at making all Black people proud, yes. And competing at, even if it's not the highest level, but it's at a level in which I truly enjoy it, and it's like happy for my mental health. And
No, that's brilliant. I think that's also like really important to highlight, I guess, with this podcast, is that you guys have said that it's not just about what kind of high level you can achieve in your sport, or I guess academia as well, but how you can balance the two in a way that suits you. Shadows are crazy. In a way that suits you, and is still like just both of them are able to stay in your life and kind of really complement each other. And I'm sure this podcast will go into so much just on how the both things do complement each other and they can go hand in hand. I was just going to ask you then, Daniel, what do you think young athletes are really struggling with at the moment, in particular, I guess, in Nigeria for you and your experiences?
I would say is a system, I think Diana touched on this, is a system that holistically develops these like young athletes. So it's a system that gets them playing the sport in an organized manner, getting better at it, and also around the psychology and the health of it. I think too much focus is just on go out and play, as opposed to go out and play with a certain level of skill and a certain level of knowledge. And then once you're not playing, what are you doing to then develop the same skills off the field or off the track or wherever? So it's this system that will help these athletes to know better, to make better decisions. Because far too many times people stop because they feel like, oh yeah, I'm just not good enough, or they stop because there's simply just no structure. And so that structure that comes in the form of knowledge from a podcast like this, or from a program that tells them with the right amount of professionals around different disciplines within that sport, will help these like younger athletes make better decisions, really, in terms of pursuing it at an elite level, or pursuing something else, or going to another sport. Because some people would do like 500 different sports, but without knowing which one they're actually good at. And this is where professionals come in and say, this is actually what you should focus on. And I think that better decision making through a structure will help them a lot.
Yeah, no, totally. And I guess just and I think you guys are all an example of this, or just actually having role models that have managed to balance both and to balance both successfully.
Yeah, yeah.
What I was gonna say, which I think brings us on nicely to kind of like the main themes of the podcast that we'll cover. And I'd love to get all three of you to kind of answer. You can jump off each other or vibe off each other. Because the whole point of this podcast is kind of to change the narrative around balancing both sports and your academics. So I guess, Jordan, I'll come back to you first, but anyone, please do jump in. Why do you think so many young children or young athletes in Africa, and I guess mainly Nigeria, do feel pressure at some point in their life? And I think you can talk about your own experiences too, to have to choose between the two of sport and school.
It's like multiple levels to it, right? I think the first thing that comes up in my head is the phrase, okay, we like playing football. It's okay, you play football till you're 30, what next? You know, having to get those questions, or like, okay, if you break your leg, what happens after that? You know, it's literally it's like statements that are not really saying quit sports, but they're saying quit sports. Focus on this because this is a better avenue for you to have a stable life and everything. But I think that the thing that people miss, and this is something I personally struggled with, is that when you say that to someone who literally genuinely loves sports, so they're not doing it just because they're doing it because there's a passion for it, because there's something in sport that is developing them as an individual. You're kind of telling them to quit on a part of themselves, which I think now we're more aware that that's something that's detrimental to the overall growth of an individual, right? So I think because of educational systems aren't structured in a way that is like, let's help you grow in your academics and let's help you also grow in sports or whatever other avenue that makes you be like this amazing individual you're created to be. What happens is a lot of people end up like being like, okay, let me create a good life for my family and everything, and let me stop this thing that I've been doing and I love for so much. But what happens is, I'm not saying, obviously, as we go through the podcast, you see different stories of people either stopping and starting again. I stopped taekwondo at some point. It's like, definitely understand it, but there is, I don't know, for me anyway, what I struggled with was like, it felt like there was a part of me that was like dying. And
it's coming to terms with it, isn't it? It's actually quite difficult, because I've had to do the same thing. It's like letting go of this equestrian side of me. Because I had a conversation about that with someone very recently. They were like, "Oh, are you still riding?" And I was like, "No." And it's so weird to say that in real life and be like, "I'm not riding." Yeah, it 100%. You mourn like that part of you, and then yeah, it's very strange. So like riffing off what Jordan just said, you know, when you do it to younger people and potentially they are super skilled, but if there isn't necessarily like the structure in place to support you in developing into potentially some like high flyer athlete, or just a guy that plays sport, right, or a person that plays sport, then you're forced to choose, aren't you? Because if we're being realistic, to say like from Zambia, there are so few people that quote unquote have made it in sport, right? We have a couple of footballers, but even somewhat like we have a gold medalist athlete like from the Olympics, and he's come back from wherever he's been, and in theory hasn't made it because he's like a PE teacher now and
Yeah.
doesn't have a lot of money, and because we don't get the same sponsorship deals. So like in America, when you win a gold or whatever, but I think he won a bronze medal. This is now years ago, not the most recent medal, but when you win a medal in America, all the the deals come, all the partnerships, all the brands come. We don't have that system built in for us in Africa. So well, you go and you have this like 5 minutes of like fame and national pride, but then what after that? Because in the majority of sports, you quote unquote expire right after like your 30s. If you can make it into your 40s, you're really lucky on average, right? Not obviously not all sports. But then what are you going to do? Because the brand deals didn't come through, you've not got paid for that moment of fame that you had anyway. So the systems don't prioritize building the children into these, athletes, even though like Africa's flooded with talent. There's not a lack of talent, it's the lack of, system in place to nurture the talent, because it can't be a priority, because we have to prioritize feeding our families and, developing the country in other ways. So we're in a catch-22, I feel, particularly from an African perspective.
Totally. And I guess in a way it's like almost this valid question from parents in theory that just want the best for you. And it feels like, well, yes, in a way, what will I do? But I think hopefully now as we progress through this and as we've seen, like you said, countries who do put a little bit more of an emphasis and ability on like sports to become some sort of career, hopefully we can learn a little bit from that too. I guess it's kind of ties into the next question of what do you hope to bring to this podcast to hope to like change that in a way, or what's your advice for people who again might not be wanting to take it to the highest level but are just struggling to even convince around them that it's worth keeping it up for a couple of hours a week?
I think someone like Jordan, right, becomes like inadvertently a role model. Someone can go and be like, but like dad, like I can do sport, and look at this guy doing a PhD at the same time and he's competing. Like it's a hard life you have to commit to 100%, and there's so many sort of sacrifices you make, like socially, financially, because a lot of us are having to support ourselves because where we come from doesn't necessarily support us sufficiently. But if we are like, these are all these people that have done it. So if you want to do it, you can. It is like it's totally feasible. And even beyond us, beyond sort of the African or Asian or whatever diaspora, even like the Western athletes, they are still having to commit to 2 lives if they do the student athlete route, right? It's just showing people that it's possible. It's hard, but it's possible. I think that's like my overarching. I want people to listen to this and be like, I can. Like if they can do it, I can do it. And if I just want to kick a ball with my friends and go to uni, I can. If I want to learn to swim in my like 20s, I don't know why I can't. Like, so it's just like filling a gap, I guess, where one exists. And it's not a hard gap, I think, to fill.
I think that's such a brilliant answer. And I think it's so, especially as you go into your adulthood, sport becomes almost even more important again, like it did as you were a child, in terms of if you're ever going somewhere new, are you meeting new people that way? We were talking about it a little bit earlier on staying injury free or staying healthy. Like it's not just about this this huge competition, but a really important part of life. Daniel, what do you think the biggest kind of like misconception maybe back at home is around trying to balance this student athlete lifestyle, especially when you're still in school?
I think it's that if you make sport your first priority, then you know absolutely nothing else, that you cannot acquire any other skill, especially like because the way the world is now, like universities, obviously, like universities and whatnot are great, but they're not the only path to like acquiring knowledge. There's loads of resources online, and even universities in the way we traditionally go to them has also changed, right? So you've got universities that you can take most, if not all, your classes online. You've got online universities. You've got, I think it's called open universities as well. You've got loads of different options that you can commit to sport, and you can also commit to building a hard skill. And I think that misconception of, oh, if you choose taekwondo, what happens when you're 30 and like you retire? Like, how are you going to feed your family? Well, you can also feed your family. And I think we should teach people to be able to juggle some of these things, and also teach people that it's not just about doing like focusing on the sport and doing nothing else. Like teach them entrepreneurial skills. How can they maybe market their journey, maybe make it appealing to sponsors? Because we now see some sponsorships that are across borders. It's not, you don't have to be in the same country. Leverage social media, leverage artificial intelligence, leverage all these different technologies we have now, and don't just box people in into thinking that it's just one thing you can do, and if you
Yeah.
focus on that, there's nothing else.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think, Jordan, through your podcast, you'll be able to show, like, with your guests that you have on, that some people very successfully have balanced the both for some time and are still what would conventionally be considered successful in their careers. And I think I just want to go back to you before we move on to our fun quickfire round. A bit more just about, like, you've got a slot with the IOC Young
Leaders program.
Out of 25. It was like 25 slots in like the whole world. So
yeah,
and you just went for it. I think, like, can you just tell us a little bit more about that, and just how sometimes it's more just about a bit of belief in yourself?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So this year I got accepted onto the International Olympic Committee Young Leaders Program, which is honestly still insane to me. And basically what it is you get you apply for this for the program, and they only select 25 young leaders, so between the ages of 20 and 28, globally. And this year they got 5,000 applicants, which is insane. And only one person from each country gets selected. And when you get selected, you're on for like 4 years to deliver a sports-based project, which is also in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So it's like insane. I'm like in this thing with the IOC, contributing to the UN SDGs, and I'm like, this is crazy, right? But I was very, very tempted not to apply for it, because I personally did not think I was that guy. Like, like the chances are very slim. But as Daniel and Diana probably have noticed, I actually messaged Diana about this before I did. And I asked her, because Diana was, not to glaze her, but to glaze her at the same time. Kind of an inspiration, because anyone who knows her is like, she's very hardworking and she's done a lot of stuff. And when she was doing her PhD and show jumping with Zambia at African Games, she was also the president of the Students' Union later on. So I'm like, if there's anyone in my life who's crazy. So this is actually kind of how this podcast and everything came about, because we inspired each other. Like, I got inspiration from Diana because I saw that she was able to do all of this. And I was like, so I messaged her, I was like, so do you regret it? Like being president? And everything. And then we spoke about it and stuff, and she told me experience, but she was like, why are you even asking me? Like, we know that if you're going to regret not applying for this, like, there's no point asking the question. If you're going to regret it, just go for it.
Yeah, if you're even thinking about it, exactly.
So she encouraged me to apply for it, and here I am, which is insane. So guys, your friends.
Yeah, I think that's
mindful about your friends.
Be supportive, and I think you both, and all three of you, are just examples of being at the highest point. PhDs aren't a walk in the park. It's a huge like level that you're getting to, and also managing to stay at a very high level in your sport. But even if that's like not a high level, and it's not even aimed just at people at a high level, of keeping active, and it's shown and probably got you. And I think my last question for you, Jordan, before we move on, is like, what do you think it is then about you? And you can kind of glaze yourself a little bit of how did you get it then with the 25 people? What was it through your upbringing or your childhood that stood out to them, do you think?
It's a good question. Well, firstly,
can I glaze Jordan for 3 seconds, right?
Yeah, and Diana's got
just for 3 seconds, because I remember going through this process, and when you think, like, in my opinion, obviously I wasn't on the panels, right, but I think Jordan got it, because Jordan's idea ultimately is about like wider participation, getting everyone involved. Oh, the sun's come up. getting everybody involved, making it accessible to everyone. I think a big part of why Jordan has been successful through this process is because it isn't elite focused, and I think it calls like the wider purpose. I'm just speaking on Jordan's behalf. I don't know if it's true, but in my opinion, that's, it isn't just about the top athletes getting whatever sponsorship deals, whatever. It's about getting everyone involved and like progressing the wider community. So ultimately, I think that's Jordan's like major MO, and I think he forgets to glaze himself in the sense that you impact so many more people than you think. And I think that probably the IOC people saw that as a really good avenue for them to slip into like what do they call it, grassroots communities.
Yeah.
So I mean that's why.
Well, I think that's a brilliant answer. Thank you very much. Jordan, have you got anything to add?
No, yeah, I think thank you, Diana. And the only thing I was gonna say was shout to, well, I think faith plays a big role for you to just go out there and put yourself out there, right?
Yeah.
And I just trusted God, and I just put this idea in because this is something I'm actually really passionate about. Like, I feel like I've been living it without having the project, if that makes sense. Like, I have been intentionally trying to push the idea just through my life that you can balance both sports and academics.
Yeah.
So when they were like, oh, design a project that you want to use sports to help out, I was like, this has to be it. So yeah, just put it out there and yeah.
And have faith. Well, that is brilliant. And this has been fabulous. I thought we'd round off in a bit of a fun way before we say goodbye. But so you guys can, I guess, just like shout out, or we can go in order. Maybe we'll start like Diana, Daniel, Jordan, and just shout out. But quick fire round. Morning or evening training, Diana?
I used to be morning. I think I'm now evening.
Very good. How come?
I used to be morning because it's better to ride in the morning. You get it out the way, and then you've just got the rest of the day to do other stuff.
Yeah.
Now I have a job, and that kind of gets in the way of my life.
Valid. Very, very fair. Me too. Daniel, what about you? Morning or evening training?
Funny, I do a lot of my training in the afternoon, funny enough. So if my employers are watching, I promise I do work. I just during my lunchtime and a little bit like 10 minutes before lunch and 10 minutes after, I just I use those 10 minutes to go to the gym, and then I spend the hour at the gym, and then I come back home. And then I guess if I was to strictly answer your question, I'll say evening, because most of my runs are in the evening. I just can't get anything done in the morning. It's not like anything past 8 a.m. doesn't count.
Got you. It's dark and cold at the moment as well. Jordan, morning or evening training?
50-50 actually. Personally, morning. I like to train in the morning, but most of my taekwondo training sessions are in the evening. So it's both. And I can't do like my middle of the day has to be PhD. This has been agreed between me and my supervisors.
Yeah, and I can testify that Jordan kicks till like 1 a.m. in the night. So
he's staying at the moment. You're just hearing the kicks. Right. A subject that you absolutely loved in school, Diana?
Difficult to decide. I would say I can pick two. Okay, so chemistry, because my teacher was phenomenal, and I loved it because of him, which I think like attests to everything in life. Good teachers, good support systems make good learning. And then English literature, because I loved reading. And we'll go with two of them.
Oh, two brilliant ones. I love that. Daniel, what did you love?
It's definitely math. It was I can't even think of of anything else. I think it was math. I want to say computer science, but we didn't actually do it enough to actually say it. So it was definitely math.
You're in tech now, so it kind of we used to sway. Jordan, what's your favorite lesson?
Ironically, I'd say biology and maths. Maths because I'm actually decent at maths. Like my brain just works that way, which is people might
Dino disagrees.
Dino disagrees, but anyhow, about maths and biology because my biology teacher was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, again, a good teacher.
Went on to Diana's because of my biology teacher and my granddad was a professor in biology as well, so I got that influence.
That's a full circle. That is amazing. Well, my last question to you is then, what is one stereotype of the student athlete lifestyle that you want to just end forever, maybe through this podcast? Tricky question.
Really hard. I think at uni, I would say from a university perspective that they are all on scholarships. I think I don't want everyone to think that everyone's on a scholarship, because I think actually 9 times out of 10 they're funding themselves.
Yeah.
And I'd love people to be more mindful of that and be a bit appreciated and help them a bit more, I think.
Very, very fair. Daniel?
I think having friends that have done and tried the uni athletes approach, I would say that it's not saying you can do it on your own, but because of the level of coverage we have with social media, you can get your skills. You can get visibility almost by yourself, but by yourself I mean with like a good set of friends that can record you and so on and so forth. But because of social media, that strict belief of you need somebody to toot your own horn isn't like, I won't say isn't a thing, but it's less of a thing now, because you have people that just go viral because they can kick a rugby ball.
So yeah, hopefully through social media these days it's a lot easier, or not I wouldn't say easier, but there's a lot more access to be able to get scouted. There might not be, you might think that, oh, I'm not in a place that these kind of people come to, but with hopefully like the power of social media now, you just kind of have to keep putting yourself out there.
Exactly.
And the right people. We'll see. Jordan, last one. A stereotype we're going to break.
I think both of them stole my 2 things.
Oh,
but I think I'll just keep it simple. I think I don't know how else to put this, but the athletes aren't not smart, but they're not intelligent. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
You feel personally affected by that one.
Don't. No, because honestly, for real, some of the smartest people I've met are actually athletes. I think because people see them just use their bodies and train, and they're physically fit and strong or fast or whatever, people forget that they also can be quite intelligent. And the strategy required just to be an athlete as well. So I think that would be the first thing, because that also goes back to the whole like picking between sports and academics. Maybe some people feel if you pick sports, your brain is just gonna disappear, but it's not true. Honestly, some of the smartest people I know are athletes. They just don't show it as much as others.
Can I do one last one?
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Bonus.
I think what people should realize is some student athletes only became athletes at uni. So I know people who picked up like ultimate frisbee or something at uni and now play like Team GB or something. So it's never too late, I guess, is the one stereotype that needs to be overcome.
Well, no, I think that's a really, really solid one to end on. And yeah, never too late to start. And thank you guys all so much. That has been your hosts. And for the rest of this podcast, I'm really excited for the rest of the season for you guys to just delve a little bit deeper into kind of these stereotypes and unpacking them and how to just make sport and this kind of lifestyle a lot more accessible. Make sure you stay tuned for episode 2 and we'll see you then.
Thanks, Lianna.
Thank you guys.
Bye.